Tonight we walk into Rome not through marble triumphs, but through a colder doorway, the doorway of the slave market, where human lives are counted, inspected, priced, and quietly folded into the machinery of the empire. In the year 79, when Ash buried Pompeii, archaeologists would unknowingly preserve rooms, chains, graffiti, kitchens, workshops, and cramped sleeping corners that later scholars from Oxford, Yale, and major museums would study with patient, uneasy care. Their work does not give us every voice that was lost, but it gives us enough fragments to hear the system breathing. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the lamps grow dim, tell us where you're listening from and what local time surrounds you now. You stand beneath a pale Roman morning, with dust gathering around your sandals and heat already lifting from the stone. The city does not wake gently, it clatters. Wooden carts groan over uneven paving. A mule brays somewhere near a fountain. A baker curses at smoke curling from his oven, and through it all, bodies move toward the market, some free, some not, some pretending not to notice the difference. The air smells of sweat, figs, olive oil, wool, and old rain trapped in the cracks of stone. A seller calls out descriptions with a trained voice, naming age, strength, skill, origin, obedience, and defects as though he is listing tools. You feel the strange calm of it, and that calm is the first discomfort. There is no thunder, no monstrous music, just business. Roman records confirm that slavery is not hidden at the edge of society. It sits near the centre. It cooks meals, builds roads, teaches children, copies, documents, tends baths, tills estates, rows ships, and carries lamps through elite houses after sunset. Research by historians connected with Cambridge and the American Academy in Rome often emphasizes this ordinary visibility, because the horror is not only cruelty, the horror is routine. A person sold here may come from war, piracy, debt, birth, abandonment, or long trade routes stretching beyond the Mediterranean. Some arrive from Gaul, Greece, Syria, North Africa, or the Danube frontier. Some were born inside Roman households, never remembering a legal identity that belonged entirely to themselves. You notice how the crowd studies them with practical attention, like shoppers checking a cracked bowl. A placard may hang from a neck, describing the person for sale. The law requires certain faults to be declared, at least in theory, because even in cruelty, Rome enjoys paperwork. There is something almost darkly ridiculous about that. A buyer wants honesty while purchasing a person. Rome can be very sincere about its indecency. The market platform becomes a little theatre, and everyone understands the script. The seller praises endurance. The buyer asks about obedience. A clerk watches for payment. A passerby pauses, curious, then continues toward lunch. The enslaved person stands there, made visible and invisible at the same time, seen as a body, ignored as a life, a fringe tidbit sometimes whispered around Roman slavery concerns protective charms worn by enslaved workers, tiny amulets against punishment, fever, envy, or a master's anger. Archaeologists have found charms across the Roman world. Though tying each one to an enslaved person is often uncertain, still, you can imagine why someone without legal safety might reach for bronze, bone, thread, or prayer. When the law belongs to someone else, even a small charm feels like a private wall. Escape, at first glance, seems simple. Rome is enormous. Streets twist, taverns swallow strangers, ships leave harbours, hills rise beyond the walls, and the countryside begins with fields, tombs, scrub, and distant farms. Surely, someone could slip away before dawn. pass beneath an arch, and vanish into the empire's endless roads. Yet the truth is quieter and more suffocating. Escape is difficult because Rome is not only a place, it is a network of ownership, suspicion, documents, rewards, languages, accents, clothes, habits, scars, and public memory. A fugitive does not merely leave a house. A fugitive leaves a legal category that follows like a shadow. You feel this when you watch the buyer step closer. He does not only inspect strength, he imagines control. Can this person carry grain? Can this person endure command? Can this person be trusted near silver cups, children, knives, doors, horses, ledgers, or keys? Every question contains another question, quieter but sharper. Will this person run? Some enslaved people are sold with guarantees. Some are marked as troublesome. Some carry rumours of previous escape attempts. Roman jurists discuss these matters with chilling seriousness, deciding when a seller must disclose a fugitive tendency. That phrase alone opens a narrow window into fear. To Rome, the wish for freedom can become a defect in the merchandise. Scholars still debate how often enslaved people attempted escape, because the evidence is uneven, legalistic, and mostly written by those who owned or punished them. Some specialists at leading universities argue that flight was constant but usually small-scale, hidden in household incidents and local searches. Others caution that surviving texts exaggerate danger because Roman elites loved imagining disorder beneath their floors. The debate remains alive, and the silence of the enslaved makes it harder. The market does not show you all that silence, but it prepares you for it. A newly purchased person may be led into a household where every doorway teaches limits. The kitchen has watchers, the storeroom has locks, the sleeping area has arrangement and hierarchy. The gatekeeper knows who enters. The neighbours learn faces quickly. Even a child in the house may know which adults can command and which adults must obey. You hear the scrape of a stylus on wax. Names are written, payments recorded, conditions noted. Somewhere, a seal is pressed into soft material, and a person's movement becomes part of an archive. The Romans do not need modern surveillance to create captivity. They have habits, records, roads, gossip, status, and fear. And fear is not always loud. Often it is stored in small lessons. Do not look too long at the door. Do not ask about the road north. Do not speak with sailors unless told. Do not carry a bundle at the wrong hour. Do not be seen near the gate after dusk. Do not make freedom visible on your face. The first punishment. Then is not the lash. It is the narrowing of imagination. Rome trains the enslaved person to picture every possible path and then see danger standing on each one. A road may mean patrols. A town may mean questions. A temple may mean sanctuary or betrayal. A stranger may offer bread, then claim a reward. Even kindness becomes uncertain. You move with the crowd as the sale ends, and the platform empties beneath the hardening sun. The voices fade into ordinary city noise. Nothing mystical has happened, and yet something irreversible has occurred. A human being has crossed from one owner to another, and the city has barely changed its rhythm. This is why the Roman world can feel so unsettling when you look closely. Its cruelty is often administrative. Its terror can wear clean sandals. Its punishments begin long before blood appears, because the system first builds a cage out of expectations, witnesses, and names written by other hands. Perhaps the dark truth is not that escape is impossible in every case. Some people do run, some disappear, some survive by wit, friendship, luck, disguise, or distance. But Rome works tirelessly to make each attempt feel lonely before it begins. The fugitive must fight not only a master, but a civilization trained to recognize ownership. The lamps are being trimmed now. The market dust settles. A collar hangs from a stool peg. A clerk closes his tablet. Somewhere nearby, a new slave learns the sound of a household door being bolted from inside, and in that soft metallic click, you hear the first answer to the question. Escape is nearly impossible because Rome makes captivity public, ordinary, profitable, and remembered by everyone. Your mind drifts from the market's dust into the denser breathing of Rome itself, where streets fold into streets, and every corner seems to hold another pair of eyes. The city is not a single watcher with one face. It is 1,000 small attentions, gathered in doorways, taverns, workshops, fountains, shrines, and rented upper rooms where neighbours know too much because walls are thin and life presses close. You walk beneath high apartment blocks, their wooden balconies leaning over the lanes like tired shoulders. Laundry hangs above you. Chamber pots wait in windows. A dog snaps at a passing cart. Somewhere, a metal worker strikes bronze with a steady rhythm, and the sound travels through the narrow street like a warning bell heard through sleep. Rome is noisy, but it listens. A mainstream fact, confirmed by urban historians working with archaeological remains from Pompeii, Ostia, and Rome, is that enslaved labour lived directly among free people. There was no separate slave quarter standing neatly apart from the city. Enslaved cooks, porters, bath attendants, barbers, scribes, cleaners, wet nurses, and shop assistants moved through ordinary public space each day. That closeness made escape tempting, but it also made recognition dangerously easy. You pass a public fountain where women fill jars, children splash water, and tired servants wait their turn. A runaway cannot simply be unknown here. Someone has seen the face before. Someone remembers the scar on the cheek, the limp, the accent, the tunic patched at one shoulder. In a city without photographs, memory becomes a kind of net, and gossip tightens the knots. The Roman street loves a story. A missing slave is a story with a reward attached. A notice may be shouted, whispered, or written. A description travels faster than tired feet. Height, hair, age, speech, clothing, possible hiding places, even habits of movement become clues passed from mouth to mouth. The fugitive becomes present in every conversation, even while physically absent. You pause outside a tavern, where oil lamps burn even in daylight because the interior is dim. Wine smells sour in the heat. Dice click on a table. A mule driver rubs his eyes and complains about road tolls. A sailor boasts too loudly. The tavern seems like a place where strangers can disappear. Yet it is also where questions multiply. Who is buying the drink? Where did the coin come from? Why does this person avoid naming a master? Rome's poorer inhabitants may not own many things, but some know the value of information. A runaway with a price on his head becomes an opportunity. Not everyone needs to be cruel. Some only need to be hungry, indebted, ambitious, or mildly curious. That is enough. Systems often survive because ordinary people find small benefits in serving them. A quirky detail from Roman urban life is the importance of barbershops as social listening stations. The barber does not merely cut hair. He hears rumours, scandals, prices, political complaints, family quarrels, and stories of theft. Imagine a fugitive trying to alter his appearance in such a place, sitting under the knife while the man holding it asks where he is from. It is almost comic. Almost. The baths offer another illusion of hiding. You enter the warm, damp world of steam, bodies, tiles, and echoing voices. Men argue about business. Someone laughs too hard. Oil glistens on skin. Sandals slap wet floors. An enslaved attendant carries towels and scraping tools, while another tends the furnace below. Here, clothing is removed, and with it disguise weakens. A body may reveal what a tunic conceals: marks from labour, brands, old lash scars, missing teeth, calloused wrists, and the posture of long obedience may invite suspicion. Rome reads bodies constantly. Status is not only spoken, it is carried in gestures, confidence, grooming, and the way someone enters a room without asking permission. Scholars still debate how sharply Romans could identify legal status from appearance alone, because poverty and enslavement often overlapped in clothing and hardship. Some researchers argue that social behaviour mattered more than visible markers, while others stress that certain scars, collars, and brands made detection brutal and immediate. The debate matters because it reminds you that the fugitive's danger was never only legal, it was also theatrical. One wrong gesture could betray a life. At the city gates, attention gathers more deliberately. Rome's gates are not sealed modern borders, yet they are places of passage where movement has witnesses. Carts slow. Animals are guided through. Travellers adjust packs. Officials, guards, porters, and vendors notice who leaves with confidence and who keeps looking over a shoulder. Fear has its own costume. Beyond the wall, roads do not mean freedom. Roman roads are famous because they connect the empire, but connection serves power as much as travel. Stones laid for armies, merchants, messengers, and administrators also help pursuit. A man sent after a fugitive can ride, ask, bribe, threaten, and follow signs from town to town. The same road that promises distance may deliver the pursuer faster. You hear sandals scraping near a shrine at a crossroads. Someone has left flowers, crumbs, and a little smoke curling upward. The fugitive may pause there, hoping the gods of boundaries care about those trapped between identities. Yet even sacred places sit within human communities, and communities have memories. A priest may pity, a passer-by may report, a beggar may watch silently, then choose a side. Inside elite houses, the city's watching becomes more intimate. The doorway is guarded, the atrium opens inward, polished and controlled. Family portraits stare from painted walls. The household has rhythms, and every enslaved person's movement fits into them. A cook missing at dawn is noticed. A literate secretary absent from the study is noticed. A young attendant gone from a child's room may set the entire household whispering. Even the architecture teaches possession. Rooms do not belong equally to everyone inside them. Some people recline, some stand, some serve wine, some remove dishes, some sleep near thresholds because they must be ready before others wake. In such a world, absence is not neutral. Absence is rebellion. You pass a workshop where wool is being prepared, and the air is thick with fibre dust. A woman's hands move quickly over the material. A boy carries water. An older man checks accounts. The shop opens to the street, so labour is public. If one worker vanishes, suppliers, customers, and neighbours may all learn by evening. Rome's economy is a memory machine, powered by repetition. There are, of course, places where a fugitive might blend in for a while. Crowds gather during games, festivals, funerals, and food distributions. Noise can swallow footsteps. Masks appear at certain celebrations. Rural visitors crowd inns. A city this large creates shadows simply because it overflows. Yet shadows are not the same as safety. They move as the lamps move. The impossible part is not taking the first step. It is taking every step after that while the world keeps asking for a name, a patron, a household, a trade, a birthplace, a reason for being alone. Rome is built from relationships, and a person without a recognized relationship becomes suspicious. Freedom needs a believable story. Slavery steals the materials needed to tell one. For a moment, It feels as though the whole city is made of listening stone. The fountain listens, the tavern listens, the gate listens, the baths listen, even the market stall, now empty, seems to remember the voice that named a price. You understand that punishment does not begin only when the fugitive is caught. It begins in the knowledge that everyone might help catch him, and so the enslaved person standing near a doorway at dusk may look toward the street and feel the terrible nearness of escape. The lane is right there. The corner is right there. The crowd is moving. The city is open. But openness is not mercy when every open place belongs to a world trained to ask who owns you. For a moment, your attention settles on iron, not the iron of swords or triumphal armour, but the smaller iron of private control, a ring around an ankle, a bar between wrists, a chain fixed near a sleeping place. These objects do not shout. They wait. They rest in corners, under benches, beside storerooms, and in the shadowed rooms where discipline is prepared before anyone admits discipline is happening. The sound is simple. Metal against stone, metal against skin, metal against itself. You enter a workyard in the cool hour before sunrise, when the sky's still grey, and the household has not yet dressed its public face. The air smells of damp ash, animal hide, stale bread, and the sour wool of tired clothing. A lamp trembles beside a wall, and its light catches a row of shackles. They look ordinary in that Roman way, like equipment, like something sensible. Archaeological finds from sites across the Roman world confirm that restraints were not rare symbols invented by later imagination. Iron fetters, collars, and chain systems have been recovered from houses, farms, barracks, and workshops, and scholars at institutions such as Oxford and the University of Chicago have treated them as physical evidence of coercion built into daily labour. The objects are blunt witnesses. They do not flatter Rome. You see how punishment begins before flight, because flight is imagined by the owner long before the enslaved person moves. A master may not know which slave will run, but he structures the household as though every slave might. Doors close, keys hang from belts, sleeping places are assigned. Movement after dark requires permission. Errands become tests, and each test can become a trap. A collar may carry an inscription asking that the wearer be returned if found. Some surviving examples speak in the voice of the owner, promising payment to anyone who brings the enslaved person back. The wording can feel almost polite, even domestic. It may name a master, a location, or a reward. Beneath the word sits a brutal assumption. The person wearing the collar is already treated as a moving loss. Your fingers almost feel the cold rim of it, though you do not touch. The collar is not only restraint, it is advertisement. It tells strangers what role they are meant to play. Do not ask this person why he is running. Do not ask what he endured. Do not ask what freedom means in his mouth. Return him and receive your money. That is the genius of Roman control. If such a dark word can be used here. The system does not require every citizen to be a guard in uniform. It invites the public to become a chain. A man at a fountain, a woman at a stall, a boy near a stable. Each can read the sign, understand the reward, and turn suspicion into action. A quirky and unsettling tidbit concerns the strange legal language around runaway tendencies. Roman writers sometimes treat the habit of running away as a defect in a slave being sold, not unlike a hidden flaw in a mule or a cracked pot. The tiny absurdity is almost unbearable. The desire to be free becomes a warranty problem. Roman paperwork could make even desperation sound commercial. Inside the household, lesser punishments may be used to teach obedience before greater ones are needed. Food can be restricted. Sleep can be interrupted. Duties can be worsened. A person can be moved from skilled work to grinding labour. A trusted attendant can be demoted to the kitchen, the mill, or the fields. Punishment does not always arrive as spectacle. Sometimes it arrives as a smaller room and worse bread. You pass into a storage chamber where ropes hang beside jars of oil and grain. The room smells of dust, vinegar, and mice. A steward checks tablets with a careful face. He is not the master, yet his authority is real. Households often contain hierarchies among the enslaved themselves, with some placed above others. The chain does not always descend in one simple line. It branches. This hierarchy makes escape more difficult because surveillance lives inside the captive community. A senior slave may fear punishment if another escapes. A doorkeeper may be beaten for failing to notice absence. A steward may lose privilege if a younger worker disappears. Rome binds people to each other through danger, making one person's flight feel like another person's disaster. That is one of the quietest cruelties of the system. Scholars continue to debate the emotional world inside these households, because surviving texts rarely preserve enslaved testimony in their own words. Some historians emphasize solidarity, hidden friendship, and shared resistance beneath elite control. Others point to status differences, competition, and fear as forces that fractured trust. Both views may be true in different rooms, on different nights, under different masters. Human beings do not become simple because records are sparse. You hear the creak of a wooden door, then the cough of someone waking before the others. Rough bedding lies near the kitchen wall. The floor is cold. A person who sleeps there learns the sounds of keys, footsteps, moods, drinking, and anger. The body becomes an instrument trained to detect danger. A soft step in the corridor can mean nothing. It can also mean the beginning of pain. Branding, when used, turns the body into a record the owner does not need to carry. A mark on the forehead, arm, or another visible place tells the world that this body has been punished, claimed, or suspected. Not every enslaved person was branded, and scholars debate the frequency and context. Yet the idea itself reveals a world where human skin could be forced to serve as a document. Think of the terror in that. A document can be lost. Skin travels with you. Some punishments aim less at injury than at memory. A beating in front of others teaches not only the punished person, but everyone watching. A night in restraints teaches the weight of an attempted choice. A forced task after punishment teaches that suffering does not excuse labour. Rome often turns pain into instruction, and instruction into social order. The city beyond the house may appear broad, but the enslaved person learns that the cage has layers. There is the physical cage of iron and locked doors. There is the social cage of watchers and rewards. There is the legal cage of ownership. There is the inner cage built by repeated punishment, where the mind begins measuring every hope against the possible cost. You stand in the yard as morning strengthens. A rooster calls somewhere beyond the wall. Smoke rises from the kitchen. A young slave carries water with careful speed, glancing neither too boldly nor too fearfully. That balance is learned. Too much confidence may anger someone. Too much fear may reveal a thought. Even the face must work. The punishment that prevents escape is not always the punishment that follows escape. It is the discipline of anticipation. It is the collar hanging where everyone can see it. It is the shackle left near the doorway. It is the master's story about what happened to the last person who tried. It is the silence that follows that story, when no one dares ask whether it is true. By the time a fugitive considers the road, Rome has already placed iron in the imagination. The first chain may not be around the ankle, it may be around the future, tightening whenever the mind tries to picture a horizon without permission, and in the dimness of that yard, as the household wakes and the keys begin to move, you understand how captivity becomes a daily rehearsal for punishment. In your ears, The street noise fades into the dry scratch of law, where ink, wax, memory, and authority decide what a human being is allowed to be. Rome does not rule only with soldiers or whips. It rules with categories. It places each person inside a legal shape, then asks the world to behave as though the shape is natural. Citizen, freed person, foreigner, slave, owner, witness, thing. The room is quieter than the market and colder than the workyard. You imagine wooden shelves, rolled documents, tablets pressed with careful marks, and men trained to speak with severe confidence. They do not need to raise their voices. Their power lies in the calmness of definition. A person can be reduced without a single shout, and Roman law knows how to do that very well. A mainstream historical fact, often examined by scholars at Yale, Oxford, and other major centres of Roman legal history, is that enslaved people in Roman law were treated primarily as property. They could be bought, sold, inherited, rented, punished, and transferred through contracts. They could also perform tasks, manage money for an owner, and even conduct business. But their legal identity remained bound to another person's power. That contradiction matters. Rome is never simple enough to be merely crude. An enslaved accountant might handle sums larger than a poor citizen would see in a lifetime. An enslaved tutor might teach Greek literature to the children of a senator. An enslaved doctor might know the secrets of pain and healing. Yet, under the law, skill does not equal freedom. Usefulness may even deepen captivity. You feel the unease of that. Talent becomes another lock. The law behind punishment does not merely ask what an enslaved person has done. It asks what lesson society must draw from the act. Theft by a slave is not only theft. Flight is not only absence. Resistance is not only anger. Each action threatens the owner's claim, and Roman society treats the protection of that claim as part of public order. Private control becomes a civic concern. A fugitive slave, in this legal imagination, is not simply someone escaping suffering. He is property out of place, a sign that discipline has failed, a dangerous example moving through the roads. The owner may pursue, advertise, punish, sell, or seek help. The surrounding community may assist because the law has trained them to see the fugitive through the owner's loss rather than the fugitive's desire. Roman jurists discussed cases with chilling precision. What counts as running away? How long must a person be absent? Did the slave intend to flee permanently, or merely avoid a beating? Did the seller know about past escape attempts? Was the buyer deceived? These questions sound technical, even dry, yet beneath them lies the human fact of someone calculating breath by breath whether survival requires disappearance. A strange tidbit from Roman legal culture is that a runaway could be described almost like a faulty animal or defective object in sales disputes. It sounds darkly absurd because the legal conversation can circle around refund, value, and disclosure, while the central truth stands in the corner wearing a body. Rome could ask whether a sale was fair without asking whether ownership was just. Quite efficient. Really, in the bleak Roman style, you enter a courtroom space in your imagination, not grand in the modern sense, but crowded with status. Voices rise under a roof or in a public basilica. Men in formal dress gather near columns. Clients wait for patrons. Petitioners clutch documents. The smell is wax, wool, dust, and human impatience. Somewhere, an enslaved witness may be present, and presence does not mean dignity. Roman legal practice often allowed enslaved people to be tortured for testimony, especially because their words were not trusted in the same way as free testimony. The body became a route to evidence. Pain was treated as a tool for extracting truth, though any calm mind can see the terrible uncertainty of truth produced under agony. The legal system wanted certainty, and so it manufactured terror. Scholars continue to debate how consistently such rules were applied across the empire, because local customs, wealth, political influence, and household power shaped real outcomes. Some historians emphasize the brutality preserved in legal texts, while others warn that written law sometimes records ideals, exceptions, and elite anxieties rather than daily practice everywhere. That debate remains important, but it does not soften the central fact. The law made cruelty thinkable. The enslaved person accused of flight faces more than a master's anger. He faces a world in which legal thought has already made his answer smaller. Why did you run? Who helped you? Where did you go? Did you steal clothing? Did you take money? Did you enter another owner's household? Did you pretend to be free? Each question pulls him deeper into a system built to prove the owner's rights. Even mercy, when it appears, often comes from ownership rather than recognition. A master may spare punishment because the slave is valuable. A skilled worker may be resold instead of destroyed. A household favourite may receive forgiveness, not because freedom is acknowledged, but because affection and investment blur together. Rome can be tender and possessive in the same breath. That is part of its danger. You sense how the law changes the meaning of space. A doorway is not just a doorway. It is a boundary between permitted and forbidden movement. A road is not just a road. It is a corridor where legal identity must be explained if challenged. A coin in the hand is not just a coin. It may provoke suspicion unless someone can say who allowed the transaction. A name itself becomes unstable. Names carry power. An enslaved person might have a personal name, an ethnic nickname, a household name, or a name assigned by an owner. A runaway may try to rename himself, but the old name follows in notices, descriptions, and accusations. The law loves fixed identities because fixed identities are easier to recover. Freedom often begins with a new name, and Rome knows this without needing poetry. The legal system also protects the fear of the master. If one enslaved person resists openly, others might imagine resistance. If one escapes successfully, others might study the path. Punishment, therefore, becomes preventive theatre dressed as justice. It speaks to those still inside the house. It says, "This is not only about him, it is about you." That message grows sharper when crimes occur within households. Roman anxieties around domestic danger are intense because enslaved people live near beds, children, food, accounts, and secrets. Elite writers sometimes imagine the household as a nest of possible betrayal. The irony is almost too heavy to lift. A society built on coercion then acts surprised when coercion produces fear. You stand beside a table where a legal tablet is being sealed. The seal impresses soft wax, and the mark hardens as it cools. It is such a small act. Press, lift, done. Yet a life may be enclosed in that little ceremony because ownership thrives through repeated confirmations. Sale confirmed, debt confirmed, inheritance confirmed, punishment justified, return demanded. The hidden strength of the system is not that every master is equally violent. They're not. Some are indulgent, some are calculating, some are careless, some are vicious. The strength lies in the fact that the law gives all of them a recognized position above the enslaved. Character may vary, but power remains. A kind master still owns the door. Perhaps this is the most unsettling part of Roman slave punishment. The violence does not appear outside civilization, as some wild breakdown of order. It appears inside order. It wears the face of procedure. It asks for witnesses. It discusses compensation. It consults precedents. It makes the cage respectable enough that neighbours can sleep beside it. The lamps burn lower now in the imagined legal room. A clerk smooths a tablet. A patron adjusts his robe. Outside, Rome continues its bargaining, praying, eating, bathing, and arguing. Inside, the words remain neat, and the neatness is frightening. The law does not need to hate the enslaved person. Hatred is optional. Classification is enough, and when escape is judged through such a system, the fugitive is already condemned by the grammar of the world around him. He has not merely gone away. He has violated a sentence written before his birth, a sentence that says another person's control is normal, and his longing to leave is the offence. The scent changes now into lamp oil, damp wool, and the faint sharpness of ink drying on a household tablet. You are inside a Roman home where power does not sit in one chair alone. It moves through corridors. It waits near storerooms. It speaks through managers, guards, nurses, tutors, cooks, porters, and older slaves who have survived long enough to understand the house almost better than its owner. A large household is not only a family, it is a small kingdom with locked rooms and nervous boarders. Everyone has a place, and every place has a watcher. The master may appear as the sun at the centre, bright and dangerous, but most control happens in smaller shadows. Orders pass from mouth to mouth. Punishments are threatened before the master even hears the name. You notice the doorkeeper first. He sits near the entrance with a practiced stillness, measuring footsteps before faces are visible. He knows the sound of family sandals, delivery carts, clients arriving too early, and servants returning late. A gatekeeper in a Roman house may be enslaved himself, yet he controls passage with the authority borrowed from ownership. His hands may not be free, but his position can close a door on someone else. Records from Roman households and estate management writings confirm that enslaved communities often included internal ranks. Stewards, farm managers, accountants, and trusted attendants could supervise others, handle resources, and report disorder. Historians at Princeton and Stanford have often explored how Roman slavery relied not just on direct violence, but on delegated authority that spread control through the people being controlled. That is the quieter mechanism. Rome makes the captive help maintain the cage. You move farther inward, across a floor swept before dawn. A steward studies jars of grain, oil, wine, and salted fish. He knows what should be stored, what has been used, what has gone missing. His tablet is a net of numbers, a missing cloak, a stolen loaf, a hidden coin, a delayed errand. Each small irregularity may become evidence. Escape does not begin with the road. It may begin with noticing who has saved bread. The overseer on a rural estate is harsher still in imagination. He stands beneath a white sky, watching workers bend over vines, olives, grain, or sheep. The landscape is wide, but his eye narrows it. He counts bodies at dawn. He counts tools at noon. He counts bodies again in fading light. The countryside looks open, but openness under supervision can feel like a painted wall. A strange tidbit from Roman agricultural writing is the cold advice sometimes offered about choosing supervisors. Ancient authors recommend men who are firm, experienced, and not easily deceived, as though cruelty can be shaped into efficient estate policy. There is a bleak little comedy here. Rome is always ready to turn human misery into management theory. Even suffering gets an administrative handbook. The overseer may also be enslaved or formerly enslaved, which complicates every easy picture. He may fear the owner above him and the labourers beneath him. He may be hated, obeyed, flattered, watched, or secretly mocked. A man with limited power can cling to it fiercely, because losing it may mean falling back into the same pit he now guards. Systems of domination often survive by giving someone a slightly better corner of the prison. Scholars continue to debate how much solidarity existed among enslaved people in such ranked households and estates. Some emphasize shared suffering, hidden communication, and mutual aid, while others point to informers, rivalries, jealous privileges, and the fear of collective punishment. The evidence does not allow one tidy answer. You can feel both truths breathing in the same room. Trust is necessary, and trust is dangerous. An informer does not need to be evil in the theatrical sense. He may be frightened. He may have children. He may hope for easier work, better food, or manumission. He may hate the runaway for risking punishment upon everyone left behind. He may report a whispered plan because silence feels more dangerous than betrayal. That is why the system is so hard to break. It turns survival itself into moral confusion. In the kitchen, heat presses against your face. Pots simmer, garlic, smoke, fish sauce, and wet wood thicken the air. A cook shouts for more water. A younger worker drops a bowl and freezes. Nobody moves for one breath. Then the room resumes. But something has been learned. Everyone has seen who startles, who comforts, who reports, who laughs. A household stores these observations like coins. Escape requires secrecy, and secrecy requires choosing listeners. The enslaved person must decide who can be trusted with a plan, a stolen scrap of food, a borrowed tunic, a meeting near a shrine, a name of a sailor, a rumor about work outside the city. Each choice is a doorway, and each doorway may open into safety or punishment. There is no map for the human heart under pressure. You hear a whisper near a grain room. It is not dramatic. It is barely more than breath. Someone knows a mule driver who leaves before dawn. Someone else has seen a path behind the cemetery wall. Someone has hidden 2 coins under a loose brick. Yet a third person has gone silent. And silence can mean fear, disapproval, or calculation. In Rome, even a pause may become evidence. Outside the house, hired pursuers form another layer of danger. Owners could use professional slave catchers, local officials, acquaintances, or simply men attracted by reward money. A fugitive may imagine distance as protection, but pursuit does not always begin with a soldier. It may begin with a broker who knows inns, ferrymen, stables, and cheap lodging houses. He knows where the desperate bargain. Such men would understand the small habits of flight. Fugitives need food, clothing, shelter, and stories. They may avoid main roads, but then they risk hunger. They may seek crowds, but crowds produce witnesses. They may enter a port, but ships need money and contacts. A hunter does not need to know the soul. He needs only to know the necessities of the body. Neighbours matter as well. Roman homes, shops, and workshops were often packed close together, especially in urban districts. People heard quarrels through walls, saw who carried bundles, noticed unusual visitors, and remembered sudden absences. A neighbour might help from pity, but a neighbour might report from spite, fear, obligation, or simple profit. Human curiosity becomes part of the prison architecture. A master, meanwhile, may not always rage in public. Sometimes he calculates. Is the runaway valuable? Does pursuit cost more than replacement? Would a severe punishment frighten the rest? Would selling the person remove trouble? Would forgiveness make the master look generous? Roman dominance often mixes emotion with arithmetic, and arithmetic can be merciless because it does not need anger to injure. You stand near the entrance again, where the doorkeeper listens to footsteps beyond the threshold. The evening light has turned copper. Clients have gone home. The household breathes in a lower register. Somewhere, a child asks for a lamp. Somewhere, a steward closes a storeroom. Somewhere, a person thinking of escape watches the bolt slide into place. This is why flight is not merely a contest between enslaved person and master. It is a contest against a whole chain of delegated power: the trusted slave, the anxious overseer, the hungry neighbour, the hired catcher, the gossiping barber, the keeper of the gate. Each one may become a link. Some links are iron, some are human, and the human links are often the hardest to see. In the darkness gathering under the roof beams, you sense the hidden cruelty of divided captivity. Rome does not only punish the body that runs, it pressures the bodies that remain. It makes them count, listen, report, and fear. It forces them to carry the master's suspicion into their own conversations, until escape becomes not just a risk to one life, but a tremor through every life nearby. A lamp flickers beside the door. The flame leans, recovers, and steadies. The house seems asleep, but it is not asleep. It is arranged. It is listening through people who may themselves long for morning, mercy, or freedom. And somewhere within that arrangement, the would-be fugitive learns a bitter lesson. The first wall to climb may be made not of stone, but of frightened human trust. The road appears beneath your feet as a pale strip of stone, stretching away from the city into fields where dust hangs low and insects hum in the heat. At first it looks like promise. A road always does. It points somewhere else. It offers distance, and distance seems like the oldest form of hope. Yet in Rome, even the road has been taught to obey. You feel the hardness of the paving through thin sandals. Cartwheels have worn grooves into the stone, and rainwater gathers in shallow cuts from older seasons. Soldiers have marched here. Merchants have cursed here. Couriers have ridden past with official messages sealed against their chests. The empire moves along these roads with astonishing confidence, and anyone fleeing must move through the same veins that carry Roman power. A mainstream historical fact, drawn from archaeological studies of Roman roads and milestones by major universities such as Oxford and Pennsylvania, is that the road system connected cities, forts, ports, estates, and administrative centres across vast distances. These roads helped armies travel, taxes circulate, letters move, and goods reach markets. They also made pursuit more organised than it might be in a scattered world of footpaths. A fugitive may imagine leaving by night, keeping to shadows beside tombs and orchards. The first miles might be possible. The body knows how to hurry when fear has sharpened it. A bundle can be tied under a cloak. Bread can be hidden beneath cloth. A stolen coin can sit against the skin like a tiny sun. But roads demand decisions, and each decision leaves a trace. Travellers ask questions, inns ask questions, ferry crossings ask questions, toll points ask questions, even silence asks questions, because silence can become a costume badly worn. A free traveller usually belongs somewhere. He may name his town, patron, trade, military unit, family, or destination, or business. A runaway must invent these things quickly, and the invented world must survive every listener. You pause by a milestone, its inscription weathered but still proud. The stone names distance and authority. It tells the traveller that Rome measures the land. That measurement matters. When a world is measured, pursuit becomes less dreamlike. A master can guess how far a person might reach by dawn, by noon, by the next market day. Distance no longer belongs entirely to the fugitive. Money is another gate, smaller than stone but often stronger. A fugitive needs food, drink, shelter, perhaps a cloak, perhaps a place on a boat, perhaps a bribe offered with trembling casualness. Without money, the body becomes visible through need. Hunger forces conversation, thirst forces stopping, cold forces shelter. A desperate person must bargain, and bargaining reveals the shape of desperation. Language can betray as sharply as a collar. The Roman world holds many tongues, accents, and local habits. Someone from Syria may speak differently from someone born near the Tiber. A Greek speaker might pass in one port and seem strange in a hill village. A person who cannot answer in the expected manner becomes memorable. The empire is wide, but width does not erase difference. It multiplies it. A quirky detail from travel in the Roman world is the importance of footwear. Sandals, boots, and repairs could suggest status, occupation, and distance travelled. A person wearing household footwear on a road might seem wrong to practised eyes. Imagine being undone not by a heroic guard, but by a tired innkeeper glancing at your soles. History enjoys these humiliating little traps. It does not always choose grand instruments. Ports seem more merciful at first. You smell salt, fish, tar, wet rope, and stale wine rising from the harbour. Ships creak against their moorings. Sailors shout across gangplanks. Dock workers carry amphora with bent backs and sure hands. Foreign faces move everywhere, and the crowd feels like a cloak. Surely this is where a person can vanish. Surely the sea is wide enough. Yet ports also collect records, debts, cargo lists, guards, merchants, brokers, and men who remember faces because their livelihood depends on noticing. Passage costs money. Captains do not usually carry nameless strangers from pure kindness. A fugitive might hide among cargo, but cargo is counted. He might pose as a hired worker, but workers are known by someone. He might beg for passage, but begging creates witnesses. Scholars continue to debate how easily ordinary people moved across provincial boundaries and local jurisdictions, because the Roman world was not a modern passport state. Some historians stress the relative freedom of movement for many free poor labourers, traders, and migrants. Others point out that enslaved fugitives lacked the social ties, recognised status, and credible explanations that made such movement believable. The road may be open in law for some, while closed in practice for others. You stand at a harbour edge and watch green water slap against wood darkened by years of use. A gull cries above a warehouse roof. The sound is harsh, almost mocking. An enslaved person planning escape must decide whether the sea is a doorway or a trap. Storms, shipmasters, pirates, hunger, and betrayal all travel by water too. Documents create another kind of horizon. Letters of introduction, travel permissions, delivery orders, contracts, military papers, and commercial notes help people explain themselves. Rome does not require every traveller to carry the same proof, yet papers can make movement easier and safer. An enslaved person sent on errands may carry authorization. A runaway without such evidence must perform confidence without props. The performance is exhausting. Walk too quickly, and you look afraid. Walk too slowly, and you lose distance. Speak too much, and lies multiply. Speak too little, and suspicion grows. Avoid towns, and hunger rises. Enter towns, and recognition becomes possible. Choose a road, and pursuers can follow. Leave the road, and the land becomes harder, lonelier, and less forgiving. Fields beyond the road may hide a person for a while. You can imagine olive trees twisted against a pale sky, dry grass brushing the ankles, cicadas grinding the afternoon into sound. A low wall offers cover, a ditch offers rest, a ruined tomb near the roadside offers darkness after sunset, but the countryside is owned, worked, and watched. Shepherds see movement. Farmers notice broken branches. Dogs announce strangers. Even geography can become punishment. Mountains promise concealment, but demand strength. Marshes swallow tracks, but bring fever. Forests shelter the fugitive, but also isolate him from food and news. The desert edges of some provinces can kill with thirst. The sea surrounds, but does not forgive. The map is not neutral. Every landscape asks for a price. Road stations, posting systems, and official travel networks add another unease. They are built to support empire, not mercy. A person with authority can move more quickly than a person hiding from authority. News of a fugitive may not travel instantly everywhere, but it can travel along the very routes the fugitive hopes to use. The Empire does not need perfect speed. It only needs enough. You hear the slow approach of a cart behind you. The wheels grind. Harness bells tremble. The driver calls to his mule in a bored voice. Nothing about him seems threatening, yet a fugitive would feel the body tighten. Does he know? Has he heard? Will he offer a ride, ask questions, laugh, report, or simply pass by? Under slavery, ordinary encounters become tests administered by chance, so the horizon stays distant, almost cruelly beautiful. Hills turn blue in the heat. A road disappears between cypresses. A sail lifts beyond the harbour wall. All of it suggests escape, and none of it guarantees it. Rome's genius is not that it seals every path. It makes every path uncertain enough that fear walks beside the fugitive like a second traveller. By night, the road cools. Stars gather above the fields. The stones hold a little of the day's warmth, and the air smells of dust, time, and animal sweat. Somewhere in the darkness, a person without permission listens for hoofbeats, dogs, voices, and the remembered sound of bolts closing. Freedom lies somewhere ahead, perhaps. But between this breath and that imagined dawn stand roads, ports, hunger, language, papers, and the immense patience of a world built to ask where you belong. Beyond the road, your eyes adjust to a different Rome, one without polished thresholds or public fountains, where survival hides in ditches, groves, tombs, shrines, abandoned huts, and the silent edges of cultivated land. This is the fugitive's hidden landscape, not truly outside the Empire, but tucked between the places where Empire looks most carefully. It is made of pauses. It's made of breath held too long. You feel dry grass brush against your calves. The evening carries the smell of crushed herbs, old stone, goat dung, and smoke from a farmhouse too distant to offer comfort. Somewhere a dog barks, then stops. That silence is worse than the barking, because silence gives the mind room to invent footsteps. A runaway does not sleep easily under such a sky. The first shelter may be a tomb beside the road. Roman tombs often lined approaches to towns, creating avenues of memory where the dead watch the living arrive and depart. Archaeologists from major institutions, including the University of Michigan and the British School at Rome, have studied these roadside burial landscapes as visible markers of family status, grief, and identity. Yet for someone hunted, they could become cold temporary caves of necessity. There is a strange intimacy in hiding among the dead. Stone inscriptions name people who once belonged to families, guilds, households, and dreams. A fugitive may not read them, or may read them too well. The dead have names cut deeply enough to endure rain. The living fugitive may be trying to shed a name before it destroys him. History can be cruelly poetic when nobody asks it to be. A shrine at a crossroads offers another kind of pause. You see a small altar darkened by soot, a few wilted flowers, a little cake left for divine attention. Travellers have touched this place with hope, fear, habit, or superstition. An enslaved fugitive might stop there not because he expects a miracle, but because fear makes even a whisper feel useful. One quiet prayer can become a blanket for the mind. A quirky tidbit from Roman religious practice is how practical small offerings could be. People left pins, coins, fruit, lamps, figurines, or scraps of food, depending on means and local custom. For the desperate, a stolen crust might become both meal and offering. That is a rather awkward arrangement with heaven. Of course. The gods receive what hunger has not already claimed. Woods may seem safer from a distance. Their darkness promises concealment. and their uneven ground confuses tracks. But forests also hide animals, thieves, shepherds, charcoal burners, and men who know the paths better than a frightened stranger. Leaves crack underfoot with unnecessary drama. Branches snag clothing. Night makes every tree trunk look briefly human. The body becomes a poor philosopher under pressure. It believes every sound. Food changes the meaning of freedom quickly. In stories, escape can look like a single brave motion. One leap over a wall, one sprint through darkness. In the body, escape becomes hunger by morning. Bread hardens, water runs out, stolen figs bruise in a cloth. A person hiding near farms must decide whether to steal from those who may also be poor, whether to beg, or whether to risk work under a false story. Rural labour markets may offer dangerous chances. A seasonal worker can appear and disappear more easily than a household servant in a grand home. Harvests need hands, vineyards need bodies, sheep need watching. Yet a stranger asking for work must explain himself. Why alone? Why without tools? Why without kin? Why does he avoid the main village? Why does his back flinch when someone raises a hand too quickly? Scholars still debate how often fugitives survive through informal labour networks, because the evidence usually appears only when someone was caught, accused, or mentioned by owners. Some historians suggest many runaways blended into the free poor for a time, especially in crowded regions. Others argue that limited money, accents, scars, and social dependency made long-term concealment extremely fragile. Both possibilities can exist in the same landscape. You crouch beside an irrigation ditch while the moon rises thin and white. Frogs call from wet mud. The water smells green, stagnant, and alive. A fugitive might drink despite disgust, because thirst is persuasive. He might wash dust from his face and try to look less like a person running. Yet the more he cleans himself, the more he must decide what identity will replace the one he is removing. Clothing becomes a problem almost immediately, a tunic marked by household use. Too fine or too poor for the story being told can betray him. So can hair, grooming, scars, shoes, and posture. A runaway may steal a cloak from a drying line or trade labour for something less recognisable. But new clothing does not create new belonging. It only buys time, and time spends quickly. Burial grounds, construction sites, abandoned farm buildings, and ruined military works can serve as hiding places. Yet each has a rhythm of visitors. Mourners come at festivals. Workers return at dawn. Shepherds use old walls for shade. Children explore places adults ignore. Nothing stays empty because the Roman world is full of people making use of whatever stands. Even ruins have schedules. You hear the distant rattle of sheep bells. A shepherd crosses a ridge against the late light, small and dark, his staff angled over one shoulder. He may be harmless. He may also know every farm within 3 miles and every reward notice mentioned in the market. The fugitive must choose whether to show himself, hide, or move away. Each choice spends strength. The hidden landscape taxes the mind more than the feet. Some fugitives may seek the protection of people already living at the margins, including bandits, smugglers, poor labourers, or displaced migrants. Such alliances could save a life, but they could also become another captivity. A fugitive with no recognised status is easy to exploit. He can be underpaid, threatened, handed over, or forced into dangerous work. Freedom without protection may turn into a different form of ownership. The body carries fear into sleep. Even when lying beneath brush or broken tile, the fugitive does not truly rest. He listens for dogs. He listens for wheels. He listens for voices naming the wrong name, the old name, the owned name. A leaf falls, and the heart leaps. A fox moves in the grass, and the breath stops. Dawn arrives not as relief, but as exposure. There may be moments of beauty, and that is almost painful. The sky lightens over silver olive leaves, mist gathers in low fields, a lark rises from the grass and pours song into the morning. For one breath, the world seems innocent. Then hunger returns, and memory returns with it. Beauty does not cancel pursuit. It simply makes the hunted person ache more sharply for a life where beauty can be received without fear. Perhaps this hidden geography reveals one of slavery's deepest wounds. It does not only lock a person inside a house, it makes the outside world unstable. Woods, shrines, farms, roads, and tombs all become questions with teeth. A place that should offer rest becomes a calculation. A human voice becomes risk. A bowl of water becomes a negotiation. The fugitive moves through a landscape filled with possible mercy and possible betrayal. Somewhere, a farmer might offer bread in silence. Somewhere, a widow might hide a stranger behind jars of grain. Somewhere, a labourer might point toward a safer path. Rome is not made only of cruelty, but the system makes kindness dangerous, and danger makes kindness rare. Night gathers again. The fields darken. Smoke thins above distant roofs. A person hiding beneath a ruined wall presses knees close to the chest and feels cold rising through the ground. The empire is not visible in that darkness, yet it is present in the need to hide, in the fear of names, in the hunger, in the listening. Escape has reached open land, but open land has not yet become freedom. The body becomes the page Rome chooses when it wants a warning to last longer than a shout. You sense this in the heaviness of a courtyard where people have gathered without wanting to gather, their faces lowered, their hands still, their thoughts careful. Punishment is not always hidden in a back room. Sometimes it is made public on purpose, because fear works best when it has an audience. You smell dust, old sweat, and the bitter smoke of a lamp burning in daylight. A wall throws hard shade across the ground. Someone shifts his weight. Someone else pretends to study a crack in the plaster. No one wants to look too eager, and no one wants to look too sympathetic. Both expressions can be dangerous in a house where power studies faces. Roman sources and archaeological evidence confirm that physical punishments could mark enslaved bodies in lasting ways. Historians at Harvard and Oxford have studied legal texts, inscriptions, collars, and images that show how punishment operated as discipline, humiliation, and communication. The point was not only to hurt, the point was to create memory that others could read without asking questions. Whipping is the simplest image, and perhaps the most familiar. Yet familiarity should not soften it. A whip is not only leather moving through air, it is a message delivered through the back, the shoulders, the legs, or wherever authority chooses to write. In Roman households, farms, mines, and workshops, punishment could be adjusted to rank, value, offence, and the mood of those in control. The sound matters, it cuts through conversation, it teaches silence. A person punished for attempted escape may be forced to stand where others can see the cost of distance. The master does not need to explain everything. The marks explain. A swollen face, a torn garment, a limp, or a new restraint tells the rest of the household what happened. Rome understands that pain can become a kind of announcement. Branding carries this logic even further. A brand can declare a person to be a thief, runaway, or criminal, depending on context and local practice. Not every enslaved person was branded, and not every owner used the same methods. Yet the possibility itself haunted the imagination. A mark placed on visible skin could turn every future encounter into a trial. The body would testify before the mouth opened. You imagine the terror of knowing that even successful flight might not erase punishment already written there. A scar can cross borders. A brand can enter a town before its owner speaks. A wound can make freedom look suspicious. Rome's punishment is cruel because it travels with the punished. It tries to make the past portable. A quirky and grim tidbit survives in the world of slave collars, where inscriptions sometimes offered rewards for returning the wearer. One collar from late antiquity famously asked that the runaway be held, not allowed to flee, and return to a named person. The words can sound almost chatty, which makes them worse. Imagine metal making small talk on behalf of captivity. Roman objects can be very rude in their honesty. Public humiliation also plays a role in making escape nearly impossible. A captured fugitive might be paraded, mocked, shaved, stripped of decent clothing, or forced into a visible sign of disgrace. The exact practice varied, but the intention remained steady. Humiliation attacks the social self. It says the punished person is not merely controlled, but exposed. It tries to make shame do the work of a chain. You feel how this pressure reaches beyond the individual. Those watching learn what fear looks like when it has a body. A child enslaved in the household may remember the sound for years. A kitchen worker may abandon a plan half-formed. A trusted attendant may report suspicious whispers more quickly. One punishment multiplies itself through memory, becoming many restraints across many minds. Scholars continue to debate the exact frequency of extreme corporal punishment in everyday Roman households, because elite writers often describe discipline from the owner's perspective. Some historians argue that severe violence was common enough to be normal within the system. Others suggest that owners sometimes limited damage to preserve economic value, especially for skilled slaves. The debate does not rescue Rome from judgment. It reveals how cruelty and calculation shared the same table. The value of an enslaved person could shape punishment in chilling ways. A skilled scribe might be spared injury to the hand. A cook might be punished where work could still continue. A field labourer might be treated as more replaceable. Mercy, if it appeared, could be only the mercy of accounting. The body was not protected as a human life, but preserved as useful property. That distinction is important. To be useful is not to be safe. A mark on the body can also separate the punished person from others. Friends may fear standing too close. Strangers may ask what happened, or worse, may already know. A person branded as a runaway may find it harder to hide, harder to work falsely as free, harder to ask for help without attracting suspicion. Punishment reaches forward and plants traps in the future. You step into an alley near a workshop where workers pause as a man passes with an iron collar around his neck. Perhaps he's returned from flight. Perhaps he has simply been judged likely to run. Either way, the collar changes the air around him. People look, then look away. The object speaks for him and over him. It reduces his story to ownership, offence, and return. The deepest injury may be this theft of narrative. The punished fugitive knows why he ran. Hunger, cruelty, lost family, terror, hope, insult, longing, or a simple refusal to remain owned. Yet the visible punishment tells another story to the public. It says disobedience. It says theft. It says danger. Rome punishes the body partly so it can control the explanation. Pain can end, but explanation can linger. There is also the threat of escalation. A first attempt may bring whipping. Another may bring branding. Another may bring sale into harsher labour. A household may not need to use every punishment often. The ladder itself is enough. Each rung hangs in the mind, and the enslaved person knows that the next failure may not return him to the same room, the same work, or the same life. In this way, punishment becomes geography. The lash points back to the house as the brand blocks the road. The collar summons the passer-by. Humiliation closes the tavern door before the fugitive enters. The wound becomes a map of where not to go, whom not to trust, what not to dream too openly. Rome redraws the world through fear, yet the body is never only what Rome says it is. Beneath marks, scars, and restraints remains a person thinking, remembering, and sometimes planning still. This is what no system of punishment can fully master. Pain may force obedience for a day, fear may silence a room, but the mind can keep a small hidden chamber, where the idea of freedom sits in darkness and refuses to die. You stand as evening softens the courtyard. The gathered people disperse slowly, each carrying away a different lesson. The master may believe the message is complete, the overseer may believe the household is safer, the watchers may believe they have seen the cost of disobedience. But somewhere among them, one person may have seen something else. Not only punishment, but proof that Rome is afraid of escape. That is the secret written beneath the scars. A society does not punish flight so fiercely unless it knows that freedom is imaginable. The body is marked because the mind can wander beyond walls. The collar is locked because the road calls. The warning is public because the desire is shared in silence and under the quiet Roman sky. That desire remains the one thing punishment can wound, but never entirely own. The air grows heavier as you descend into places where punishment no longer tries to return a person to ordinary labour. It sends him somewhere lower, darker, and almost outside the map of human concern. Mines, quarries, mills, and brutal work camps form another Rome beneath Rome, a world where the body is not corrected, but consumed slowly. Escape from such places is not merely difficult, it can feel like escaping from the earth itself. You hear the first sound before seeing anything clearly, stone striking stone, iron biting rock, a cough swallowed by dust, a chain dragged across rough ground. The rhythm is not music, although the overseer's mind may treat it like order. It is labour reduced to impact, breath, and endurance. Each blow of the tool seems to shorten the future by a little more. Roman evidence confirms that mines and quarries were among the harshest destinations for condemned criminals and enslaved people. Scholars at the University of California, Berkeley, and Oxford have studied literary references, legal punishments, and archaeological remains from mining districts across the empire. Their work shows that extraction was not only economic, it could also be penal, forcing bodies into landscapes where profit and punishment became almost the same thing. You imagine a quarry at noon, white with heat. The stone reflects sunlight until the air itself seems sharp. Men bend under loads, their shoulders dark with dust and sweat. Others cut blocks from the living rock, guided by shouted orders and the scrape of tools. Water is never enough. Shade is a rumour. The sky is huge, yet it gives no mercy. A quarry does not need high walls in every direction. Exhaustion is a wall. Distance is a wall. Guards, chains, thirst, and the absence of friendly villagers are walls. A person punished here may look across open land and still understand that his body cannot carry him far. Punishment has entered the muscles, reducing the possible length of a dream. The minds are worse in the imagination because they remove even the sky. You feel the passage narrowing. The air turns damp, hot, metallic, and sour. Lamps tremble in low tunnels. Shadows crawl over beams set into the earth. A worker stoops for hours, striking, scraping, carrying, breathing dust that settles deep inside the chest. The mountain accepts labour silently, as if it has seen empires before and expects to see them die. A grim tidbit from Roman mining traditions concerns the use of condemned labour in places where conditions were so destructive that survival itself was not the point. Ancient writers sometimes speak of being sent to the mines as a punishment nearly equal to death, though with more waiting involved. That is Rome at its most efficient and least charming, turning execution into a work schedule. Mills offer a different horror. They're closer to daily life, sometimes inside urban or estate settings, but the labour can be crushing. A rotary mill needs bodies or animals to push the heavy mechanism in circles. Grain must become flour. Flour must become bread. Bread feeds the city that does not ask who staggered through the night to make it possible. The smell is warm grain, sweat, animal hide, and human fatigue. An enslaved person sent to the mill may be pushed into repetitive labour that destroys time itself, around and around. The same circle, the same weight, the same dim room. There is a strange cruelty in circular work because it mocks travel. The body moves constantly and goes nowhere. For someone punished after an escape attempt, that symbolism must have felt almost deliberate. You wish to leave. Now walk forever in place. Scholars continue to debate the exact boundary between punishment and ordinary exploitation in mills and mines, because Roman labour systems varied widely by place and period. Some researchers stress formal legal condemnation, especially for mines, while others emphasise that private owners could also impose horrifying working conditions without court sentences. The difference matters legally, but to the body inside the dust, distinctions may have felt painfully thin. A master might sell a troublesome slave to a mine contractor, a quarry operation, or a brutal rural estate. That sale could function as punishment even when dressed as business. The owner avoids further trouble. The buyer acquires labour at a price. The fugitive vanishes from the household's memory and becomes someone else's instrument. Roman cruelty often changes hands with a receipt. The impossibility of escape grows sharper in these places because identity is stripped down to function. A mine worker is tired before dawn. A quarry worker is watched because stone is valuable. A mill worker is confined by schedule and fatigue. Food may be controlled, sleep rationed, and movement restricted. Even if a person breaks away, he may carry obvious signs of penal labour: chains, injuries, shaved hair, dust ingrained into skin, and the haunted posture of someone who has been underground too long. You listen to breathing in a tunnel. It comes in fragments, each breath a small argument against the place. A man coughs. Another whispers something too soft to understand. Perhaps it is a prayer. Perhaps it is a curse. Perhaps it is only a name repeated so it will not disappear. In extreme labour, memory itself becomes a form of resistance, because the system wants the worker to become nothing but effort. Food in such environments is not comfort. It is fuel. Coarse bread, thin gruel, bitter water, perhaps olives if fortune has not completely forgotten the place. The body learns to measure life in mouthfuls and bruises. A person planning escape must ask whether he can run while underfed, injured, watched, and far from allies. The answer may change from hour to hour, depending on strength, weather, guards, and despair. Some punished workers may have tried. Human beings have escaped from astonishing places because hope can be irrational in the most necessary way. A broken chain, a sleeping guard, a storm, a collapsed passage, a festival distraction, a bribed labourer, a sympathetic driver. Any flaw might become a door. Yet the cost of failure from such a sentence would be severe, and the body already weakened. The road begins farther away when one starts beneath the earth. There is also the problem of replacement. In the mind of Roman power, condemned labourers can be treated as expendable because new bodies may arrive through war, courts, trade, or sale. This does not mean each individual owner felt nothing. It means the structure did not need tenderness to function. Extraction cares about output. Punishment cares about fear. Together, They create a very cold arithmetic. You rise in thought from the mine to the city above, where bread is broken at a table. Buildings gleam with cut stone, coins carry imperial faces, and bathhouses warm themselves with fuel and labour. The comfortable world rests on the punished world without always naming it. That is one of history's most unsettling habits. Beauty often stands on tired backs, then asks to be admired for its balance. In the dimness of the mill, a worker pushes the beam again. His feet know the path by misery. Grain pours, stone turns, flour gathers. Somewhere beyond the wall, morning begins for others as a smell of fresh bread. For him, morning may be only another circle, another command, another hour preserved for usefulness rather than life. Perhaps that is why mines, mills, and quarries terrified those who considered escape. They represented not just pain but disappearance. A person sent there might not return to warn the others, except through rumour. He becomes a story told in kitchens, whispered near sleeping mats, shaped by fear until the place itself turns almost mythical. Do not run, the story says. There are places worse than the house. There are places where Rome buries you while you are still breathing. The tunnel lamp flickers. Dust drifts through the beam of light like grey snow. A chain shifts in the dark, and the sound is small, almost tired. Above, the road may still exist. The sea may still breathe against the harbour. The stars may still open over fields. But here the horizon has narrowed to stone, grain, iron, and labour. Escape is not impossible because courage is absent. It is nearly impossible because punishment can reduce the world until there is barely enough space left to imagine a door. The landscape opens into a place where punishment is meant to be seen from far away, not hidden, not whispered, not sealed inside a household courtyard. Seen. You stand near a road outside a city, where traffic passes with the slow indifference of carts, travellers, animals, soldiers, and merchants carrying baskets under the morning light. Rome understands roads. It understands audiences. It understands how fear can be planted beside a path and left there to grow. The air smells of dust, horse sweat, dry grass, and distant smoke. A crow calls from somewhere above the fields. The sound lands strangely, because here the living and the dying may share the same road. People pass because they must. Someone has goods to sell. Someone has a letter to deliver. Someone has a child pulling at a tunic. And beside that ordinary motion, Rome places its most terrible lesson. Crucifixion was among the most feared punishments in the Roman world, especially for enslaved people, rebels, bandits, and those marked as threats to public order. Scholars at Brown, Duke, and Oxford have examined Roman legal sources, literature, and rare archaeological evidence to understand its purpose. It was not merely execution, it was degradation, exposure, and warning arranged in open space. You do not need to stare closely to understand the message. Rome wants distance to carry it. The shape against the sky tells passers-by what happens when authority is challenged too openly. For an enslaved fugitive, the threat does not need daily use to become powerful. The possibility is enough. A punishment publicly known can rule the mind even when no cross stands nearby. This is where Roman punishment becomes theatre, though no one should mistake that word for entertainment alone. Theatre means staging, it means audience, it means memory, it means placing a body where meaning can be read by strangers. The condemned person is made into a sentence the state, or owner, wants everyone to finish silently. Do not rebel. Do not flee. Do not imagine that the road belongs to you. A grim and quirky tidbit, if one can use such a word near such darkness, is that Romans could be strangely precise about public shame. They cared where a punishment occurred, who saw it, what status it marked, and what story it told. Even disgrace had choreography. Rome could take cruelty and give it stage management, because apparently efficiency was not enough. It also wanted symbolism. You hear the murmur of travellers slowing, then moving again. Some look away, some stare. Some make comments too quiet to catch. A parent may hurry a child past. A soldier may barely notice. A merchant may remember the scene only as a delay on the road. Public terror depends partly on this mixture of horror and normal routine. The punishment is shocking, but the world keeps working beside it. That is one of its cruelest powers. It teaches people to continue. The enslaved person hearing of crucifixion does not only fear death, he fears being displayed as less than human, stripped of privacy, comfort, burial certainty, and the dignity of a final hidden moment. Rome's message is not simply that the body can be killed. Every body can be killed. Its message is that the body can be turned into public property at the end, just as it was treated as private property during life. The punishment also reaches those who are not there. A rumour travels back to kitchens, farms, workshops, barracks, and mills. Someone says a runaway was crucified near the road. Someone adds that he had stolen a cloak. Someone else says he struck an overseer. Details change with each telling, but the warning sharpens. Stories do not need perfect accuracy to produce fear. They only need to be believed enough. Scholars continue to debate the frequency of crucifixion for individual runaway slaves compared with other punishments such as whipping, branding, sale, confinement, or forced labour. Some historians emphasize that crucifixion was reserved for especially serious cases, public crimes, rebellion, or aggravated violence. Others note that Roman elite literature presents it as a constant shadow over enslaved life. The evidence is uneven, but the shadow itself is historically real. The rare archaeological traces make that shadow stranger. Crucifixion usually leaves little behind because wood decays, bodies vanish, and records often speak from the side of power. Yet occasional finds, including skeletal evidence studied by modern specialists, remind us that this was not merely a literary threat. It entered bone, iron, and earth. History sometimes preserves horror in fragments so small they feel almost accidental. You walk along the roadside, and the stones underfoot seem to hold heat from many days. This road may have carried grain, soldiers, wedding guests, tax collectors, and funeral processions. Rome loves roads because they make the empire visible to itself. Yet a road marked by punishment becomes something darker. It connects towns, but also connects fear from one witness to another. For enslaved people, crucifixion formed the far edge of imaginable punishment. Not everyone would suffer it. Many would never see it closely. But the threat gave shape to the entire system, like a storm cloud beyond the hills. Lesser punishments gained force because something worse could always be named. The whip, the collar, the mine, the sale to a harsher master. Each stood on a ladder whose upper rungs disappeared into public terror. You can sense how this affected escape. Flight is already dangerous because of hunger, roads, watchers, and documents. But crucifixion adds another question inside every plan. What if capture turns not into return, but into an example? What if the owner decides ordinary punishment is insufficient? What if the authorities interpret flight as theft, violence, conspiracy, or rebellion? The fugitive must carry possibilities heavy enough to bend the will. Yet Rome's terror also reveals its anxiety. A society confident in obedience does not need such visible warnings. Public punishment admits the existence of public fear among rulers. It says the enslaved are watched not because they are weak, but because they are numerous, necessary, and potentially unknowable. Rome depends on the labour of people it does not fully trust. That dependence trembles beneath the monument of power. The crucified body, then, becomes a message of domination and a confession of insecurity. It tells the enslaved not to run. It tells the free poor not to sympathise. It tells masters that order can be restored. But beneath those messages lies another one, never officially spoken. People keep resisting. People keep fleeing. People keep forcing Rome to repeat its warnings. Perhaps that is why roadside punishments are so unsettling in memory. They place absolute violence beside ordinary life, asking everyone to accept the arrangement as necessary. A traveller adjusts his pack. A cartwheel strikes a rut. A bird lifts from a field. The punished body remains. The world continues. And that continuation may be the darkest part, because it shows how cruelty can become part of the landscape. As evening gathers, the road cools and the voices thin, shadows lengthen across the stones. The city gate stands in the distance, calm and practical. Someone lights a lamp in a roadside inn. Someone laughs too loudly over wine. Someone says he must leave before dawn. Life moves around the warning, absorbing it, carrying it onward. You understand then that crucifixion is not only an end, it is a threat designed to travel backward into every household, every field, every whispered plan. It does not wait at the moment of capture. It enters the imagination long before the feet move. It makes the fugitive picture the road not as a path away, but as a stage upon which Rome might claim the final word. And still, somewhere in the empire, someone runs. That fact sits quietly against the terror, small but immense. The road is watched, the punishments are known, the stories are repeated, and still the human desire to leave suffering behind continues to breathe. Rome can place warnings beside the roads, but it cannot make the horizon stop calling. It can only make answering that call almost unbearable. The road widens into memory, and memory carries the sound of marching feet, not the neat marching of victory carved on monuments, but the uneven, desperate movement of people who have decided that flight alone is no longer enough. In the Roman imagination, no shadow falls across slavery quite like revolt. It begins as rumour, hardens into panic, and then becomes a story powerful people repeat for generations, partly to remember and partly to warn. You stand beneath a southern Italian sky, where the heat lies heavy over vineyards, sheep paths, training grounds, and dry hills. The air smells of crushed grass, leather, iron, and the smoke of cooking fires. Somewhere nearby, men speak in low voices around stolen weapons. Someone sharpens a blade on stone. Someone laughs too quietly because fear has made laughter strange. A revolt is not born from noise at first. It is born from listening. The most famous slave uprising in Roman history was the revolt led by Spartacus, beginning in 73 before the Common Era, when gladiators broke out from a training school at Capua. Historians at institutions such as Yale, Columbia, and Oxford have long examined the accounts of Plutarch, Appian, and other ancient writers, while carefully noting that these sources were written from the Roman side. The result is a story both documented and distorted by fear. Spartacus is remembered as a gladiator, probably from Thrace, though even that identity reaches us through Roman language and Roman assumptions. He becomes, in later imagination, almost too large, a symbol of rebellion placed against the iron order of the Republic. Yet you should picture first not a symbol, but bodies escaping confinement. Men trained to fight for spectacle turn their training against the world that staged them. A curious tidbit from the earliest phase of the revolt is the almost improvised quality of the escape. Ancient accounts describe kitchen tools, seized wagons, and weapons taken as opportunity allowed. There is a dark little irony here. Rome trains men for violent entertainment, surrounds them with instruments, then appears offended when they apply the curriculum outside business hours. One might call that a management oversight. If the consequences were not so grave, the uprising grows because it speaks to many kinds of desperation. Enslaved shepherds, rural labourers, prisoners, and others join the rebels. Some may seek revenge, some may seek home, some may seek loot, safety, or a chance to stop being hunted. A mass revolt does not need every heart to beat for the same reason. It only needs enough people to agree that remaining as they are has become impossible. You feel the terror this creates among Roman elites. Their estates depend on enslaved labour. Their households depend on obedience. Their wealth rests on people who are close enough to cook their food, tend their children, open their doors, carry their letters, and hear their secrets. When those people become an army, the private fear of every master becomes a public crisis. The house has stepped onto the battlefield. Rome's response grows harsher as the revolt expands. Commanders fail, armies are embarrassed, and the rebels move through the countryside with alarming success. The Roman world is not used to seeing enslaved people as strategic actors, yet the revolt forces exactly that recognition. Spartacus and his followers used terrain, speed, surprise, and the weaknesses of Roman command. For a time, the system that made escape nearly impossible finds itself chasing thousands. Scholars continue to debate Spartacus's true aims, because ancient authors do not agree, and the rebels left no manifesto in their own voice. Some historians argue that he wanted to lead people out of Italy and back toward homelands beyond Roman control. Others suggest that the movement fractured between those seeking escape and those seeking plunder or continued war. The debate remains open because the rebellion was many lives joined under pressure, not a simple speech carved in stone. This uncertainty matters. It prevents the story from becoming too clean. A revolt is not a painted banner held still for admiration. It is hunger, fear, disagreement, exhaustion, hope, argument, and movement through dangerous land. People in flight must decide whether to cross mountains, attack towns, seek ships, avoid armies, or divide. Each decision can save some and doom others. Freedom at scale becomes almost unbearably complicated. You hear the rebel camp at night, fires crackle low, horses stamp, a wounded man mutters in sleep. Someone remembers a family separated by sail. Someone else speaks of a village he may never see again. A woman mends torn cloth with fingers stiff from cold. These armies were not made only of fighters in shining moments. They were made of people carrying trauma, need, memory, and unfinished lives. The Roman fear of revolt changes how masters think about ordinary slaves. After mass resistance, even silence can seem suspicious. A group speaking together near a mill may look like conspiracy. A delayed order may feel like defiance. An absent worker may awaken memories of armies on the road. Punishment hardens because the elite mind links the individual fugitive to the imagined crowd. One runaway becomes the first spark of a fire. This is how Spartacus deepens the impossibility of escape for many who never joined him. The revolt gives Rome a story to justify suspicion. It allows masters to say, "We know what happens when control weakens." It encourages harsher supervision on estates, tighter household discipline, and sharper responses to rumours. Historical trauma can become policy when power chooses to remember only its own fear. The ending of the revolt is brutal, and Roman memory makes it instructive. Marcus Licinius Crassus defeats the rebels in 71 before the Common Era. Ancient accounts say thousands were crucified along the road between Capua and Rome. Whether every number is exact is debated, but the message preserved by the sources is unmistakable. Rome turns victory into a corridor of terror, placing punishment along the same road that once carried escape. The image is designed to last. It tells masters that order has returned. It tells the enslaved that collective flight may end in public destruction. It tells future rebels that Rome will answer humiliation with display. Yet it also tells you something Rome might not wish to confess. The punishment is enormous because the fear was enormous. The road of crosses is not only triumph, it is panic made official. You sense the silence after such violence. Fields return to cultivation. Estates count losses. Buyers inspect new slaves. Households resume meals. The Republic continues arguing over politics, ambition, and honour. But beneath the restored surface, the memory remains like a buried coal. Enslaved people remember in whispers. Masters remember in suspicion. Rome remembers in punishments designed to prevent another gathering of bodies into force. Spartacus does not make escape impossible by himself. The system was already there, with its laws, roads, collars, informers, and punishments. But his revolt reveals why Rome treats even small acts of flight with such seriousness. Escape is not merely the loss of labour. It is the possibility of example. It is the terrifying thought that one person's absence might become another person's plan, then a group's decision, then a movement on the road. The hills darken under evening. The training school at Capua lies far behind in imagination, yet its broken gate remains open in memory. You can almost hear the first footsteps leaving, not knowing what history would make of them. They walk into danger, into hope, into violence, into confusion, and into a Roman fear that would outlive them. Perhaps that is the hidden truth of revolt in a slave society. Power fears not only weapons, but recognition. It fears the moment when the enslaved look at one another and understand that suffering is shared. It fears the whisper becoming a crowd. It fears the crowd becoming a road. And for that reason, Rome punishes escape as though each fugitive carries not only his own body, but the beginning of an army. The room grows smaller, and the danger becomes less visible than iron. You're no longer looking only at roads, collars, courts, or punishments displayed beneath the open sky. You're looking at the quieter trap of attachment, where the enslaved person's heart is tied to other lives, and every possible escape must pass through the question of who will be left behind. A lamp burns low in a sleeping corner. The air smells of wool, ashes, milk, and the faint sweetness of dried fruit hidden for later. A child breathes softly beneath a rough blanket. Somewhere beyond the wall, a master's household sleeps with doors bolted and keys placed carefully away. The night seems still, but inside one human mind, the world is moving with terrible speed. Escape asks for courage, but it also asks for abandonment. A husband may be owned by one household, a wife by another. A mother may nurse a child who can be sold. Siblings may work in different rooms, or different estates, or different towns entirely. Roman slavery often fractured family bonds because the law recognized ownership more firmly than kinship among the enslaved. This is a mainstream fact studied by historians at Harvard, Princeton, and Oxford through inscriptions, legal texts, and funerary evidence. Those inscriptions matter because they sometimes preserve tenderness that law ignored. Freed people and enslaved people commemorated spouses, children, companions, and household relationships in stone. The words do not erase suffering, but they remind you that love survived inside the system that treated love as inconvenient. A name carved by a grieving hand becomes a small rebellion against disappearance. You imagine a man preparing to run, then looking toward the corner where his child sleeps. If he goes, punishment may fall upon those who knew him. If he stays, his own life remains owned. If he takes the child, the road becomes slower and more dangerous. If he leaves the child, freedom may taste like guilt. There is no clean door here. Every door has bloodless pain on the handle. A woman may face a different cruel arithmetic. She may serve in a household where she has formed bonds with other enslaved women, with children she raised, or with family members whose survival depends on her daily work. She may know that flight could provoke sale, separation, or harsher monitoring for everyone near her. Rome does not need to punish only the runner. It can squeeze the circle around the runner until love itself becomes restraint. A quirky, sad tidbit appears in the practice of enslaved people creating informal families and shared names, even when Roman law offered fragile recognition. Some household groups used kinship language with deep seriousness, calling one another husband, wife, brother, sister, or child. Rome may have preferred tidy property categories, but human beings insisted on making family anyway. Very inconvenient of them, from the empire's point of view. The trap is not only emotional, it is practical. A person with loved ones has fewer secrets. Someone notices when bread is saved. Someone sees when a bundle is hidden. Someone asks why a face has changed. Love makes people observant because love studies details. The same tenderness that protects can also expose a plan, not through betrayal, but through fear. You hear a whisper beside a hearth. Do not go tonight. Wait until the festival. Wait until the master travels. Wait until we can find news from the port. Wait until the child is stronger. Every delay may be wise. Every delay may also become another year. Hope does not always die from refusal. Sometimes it is postponed until it becomes too tired to stand. Small privileges complicate the cage further. Some enslaved people managed money, kept a peculium, handled accounts, worked in shops, or enjoyed partial mobility because their labour required trust. A skilled slave might sleep under a roof, eat better food, form client ties, and dream of eventual manumission. The conditions remain unfree, but they create stakes, running risks losing not only misery, but possibility. Roman law and practice allowed some enslaved people to be manumitted, though the path depended heavily on owner choice, wealth, age, usefulness, affection, and social calculation. Researchers at Columbia and the University of Pennsylvania have studied manumission inscriptions and legal restrictions to understand how freedom could be granted, purchased, promised, delayed, or manipulated. For many, the hope of lawful release became a golden thread and a golden chain. You can feel how powerful a promise might be. Serve well, and perhaps freedom will come. Save enough, and perhaps a price can be paid. Obey quietly, and perhaps the master will remember loyalty. The word perhaps is soft, but it can hold a life in place. It asks the enslaved person to endure today for a tomorrow controlled by someone else. Scholars continue to debate how often such hopes restrained resistance. Some historians argue that manumission offered a real, if unequal, route out of slavery for certain urban and skilled slaves. Others warn that focusing on success stories can distort the broader violence of the system, especially for rural labourers, miners, and the many people never remembered in inscriptions. Both perspectives matter, because hope can be genuine and coercive at the same time. There is also the danger of betrayal by promise. A master may hint at freedom to encourage obedience, then delay it. A steward may suggest favour if a slave reports suspicious talk. A household favourite may be told that loyalty will be rewarded if he helps prevent another's escape. Privilege becomes bait, and bait becomes division. Rome does not always need chains when it can distribute unequal hope. You notice a small box hidden beneath a floor tile. Inside are coins, perhaps saved from tips, side work, gifts, or careful skimming from market errands. Each coin has weight beyond money. It is time condensed into metal. It is risk. It is a future quietly counted by touch. Yet those coins can also be discovered, confiscated, or used as evidence of planned flight. Even savings can accuse. The emotional landscape grows more tangled when affection crosses the boundary between owner and owned. A nurse may care for a free child for years. A tutor may shape a young master's mind. A household attendant may know the family's illnesses, scandals, and griefs. Real attachment can exist inside unjust power, and that is precisely why it becomes dangerous. Kindness from above can soften a room without changing the lock on the door. But complexity should not romanticize captivity. It makes it more unsettling. A person can be loved and owned, trusted and punished, called loyal and sold, promised freedom and denied it. The heart may receive warmth in one hand while the other hand holds legal control. Rome's domestic world is full of these contradictions, and escape must move through them like a candle through wind. For the fugitive, the final night may contain no heroic music, only the tiny sounds of decision. A cloak lifted from a peg, a coin tied into cloth, a hand resting for one breath above a sleeping child's hair, a whispered farewell to someone who cannot safely answer. The door is not merely wood, it is love, guilt, fear, hope, and the entire weight of those who may suffer in the morning. Perhaps this is why many did not run. Even when the road existed and the desire was real, the body could leave faster than the heart. The heart had to gather names, faces, promises, debts, and unfinished tenderness. The system understood this without needing to say it aloud. It made captivity personal. It learned to anchor people not only with punishment, but with everything they could not bear to lose. The lamp sinks lower, the child turns in sleep. A key rests somewhere beyond reach. Outside, the night waits with fields, roads, dogs, shrines, and strangers. Inside, love waits too, just as dangerous in another way. The enslaved person stands between them, and the silence becomes almost unbearable. Escape may be the dream of one body, but slavery makes sure that no body dreams alone. Now the darkness loosens in a different way, not into safety, but into possibility. You begin to notice the cracks, the small misalignments in Rome's machinery, the moments when a system built to control human movement fails because human life is too varied to be sealed completely. A gatekeeper falls asleep, a notice is misunderstood, a ship leaves early, a master dies, a storm erases tracks, a stranger chooses mercy over reward. The sound here is softer, rain tapping on roof tiles, a cartwheel stuck in mud, the low voice of someone lying convincingly beside a stable wall. Rome is powerful, but it is not all-seeing. It depends on people, and people mishear, forget, pity, drink too much, take bribes, or look away at the exact moment history changes direction, a mainstream historical fact. Supported by Roman legal texts and inscriptions studied by scholars at the University of Chicago, Oxford, and New York University, is that slavery in Rome included legal pathways to freedom through manumission. These paths were unequal and controlled by owners, yet they produced large communities of freed people across the empire. Freedom could arrive by will, payment, gratitude, public ceremony, or private arrangement. This does not make slavery gentle. It makes the trap more complicated. A man might serve for years, save money, endure humiliation, and finally receive legal freedom from the same power that held him. A woman might be freed in a will, only after the owner's death turned mercy into paperwork. A skilled worker might purchase freedom through accumulated savings, while a field labourer never sees such a path open. You walk through a district where freed people run shops, carve inscriptions, join associations, marry, bury relatives, and place their new status into stone. Their names are proof that Rome's categories can change, though not always cleanly. A freed person may still carry obligations to a former master. Gratitude may be expected. Labour may continue. Freedom arrives, but it may arrive carrying old shadows in its hands. A quirky tidbit appears in the pride of some freedmen's tombs. Certain inscriptions and monuments speak almost too loudly, announcing professions, achievements, family bonds, and respectability with energetic confidence. You can almost hear the stone clearing its throat. Rome may have called them former property, but they answered with names, portraits, trade signs, and occasionally the architectural equivalent of saying, "Yes, I did quite well. Thank you." These freed communities could become fragile shelters of knowledge. A fugitive might seek someone who understood the old fear. A former slave might know which roads were watched, which masters were cruel, which inns asked few questions, which magistrates could be bribed, or which temples attracted desperate petitioners. Such help was dangerous, of course. To assist a runaway could invite punishment, accusation, or loss. Mercy had a legal teeth around it. Sanctuary is another crack, though never a simple doorway. Temples, altars, statues, and sacred spaces sometimes offered temporary protection or at least delayed violence. A person clinging to an altar could force negotiation, public attention, or priestly involvement. But sacred space did not always produce freedom. It might lead to sale to a less cruel master, investigation, return, or nothing at all. The gods could slow the hand, not always break it. You imagine a fugitive entering a temple at dawn, when incense still floats low and the floor holds the night's coolness. His hands tremble against stone. Priests look at him, then at one another. Outside, footsteps gather. The moment is suspended between law and pity, between ownership and witness. Even if rescue fails, the act changes the scene. Captivity has been dragged into public sacred light. Scholars continue to debate how effective sanctuary claims were for enslaved people, because evidence varies across periods and regions. Some historians view sanctuary as a meaningful pressure point against extreme abuse, especially when public opinion or priestly authority mattered. Others caution that sanctuary often protected owners' interests by preserving valuable property while avoiding scandal. Both readings expose the same truth. Rome's system had weaknesses, but even its weaknesses could serve power. Legal disputes also create cracks. A person might claim to be wrongly enslaved. Someone might argue that a child's status had been misclassified. A freed person might defend freedom against re-enslavement. A buyer might challenge a sale because a slave had been concealed as fugitive. These cases did not overturn the institution, but they show that status could become contested territory. Even Rome's categories sometimes had unstable edges. You stand near a magistrate's bench where voices rise over a disputed identity. The air smells of wax, wool, and rain drying from cloaks. A witness remembers one version. A document suggests another. A patron speaks with polished anger. Somewhere within the argument, a human life balances on interpretation. Rome loves rules, but rules require readers, and readers can be pressured, persuaded, confused, or bought. Mistaken identity could also protect a fugitive, at least briefly. The empire's vastness made perfect recognition impossible. A man with common features, a new name, a changed trade, and enough nerve might pass among the free poor. A woman working in a different town might become part of a new household under a story no one had reason to doubt. Survival could depend on being ordinary enough to bore suspicion. This is not the glamorous freedom of legends. It is freedom lived quietly, with lowered voice and careful answers. The successful fugitive may never boast. He may avoid old regions, old friends, old accents, and old prayers. He may sleep lightly for years. He may become free in practice without ever becoming free in law. That is a strange, haunted kind of victory. But history is full of victories that cannot afford celebration. There are also failures within pursuit. Reward notices may not reach the right town. Descriptions may be vague. A scar may heal, hair may grow, clothing may change. A master may abandon the search because cost exceeds value. War, plague, political crisis, or simple inconvenience may interrupt the chain of recovery. Rome is frightening, but it is busy. Sometimes bureaucracy loses interest before hope loses breath. A ship can become a miracle if it leaves before questions arrive. A caravan can become cover if its members do not care too much. A festival crowd can swallow one person among masks, torches, music, drunken singing, and bodies pressed close under garlands. Public celebration briefly rearranges attention. The same city that watches everyone may blink beneath its own noise. You hear flute music from a street festival, bright and thin above the crowd. Oil lamp swings, people laugh, sweat, argue, stumble, kiss, and bargain. A fugitive moving through such a crowd must not look like a fugitive. He must look tired, annoyed, distracted, perhaps slightly drunk, anything but hunted. Survival becomes acting, and acting becomes a craft learned under terror. Some enslaved people escaped not by vanishing, but by negotiating. They might flee to pressure an owner, seek sale away from abuse, appeal to a patron, or force attention to unbearable conditions. Flight could be a bargaining tool as much as a journey toward unknown freedom. This unsettles the simple image of escape as one final break. Sometimes resistance is a message carried by the feet. The cracks are real, yet they never become a wide-open gate. For every person who disappears, another is caught. For every merciful stranger, another reports. For every document that saves, another condemns. The system fails in scattered moments. Not because it is kind, but because no human system can perfectly control the living. The cracks matter precisely because the wall remains so high. Perhaps this is the quiet truth hidden inside Rome's confidence, its punishments, laws, roads, and watchers are powerful because escape is possible enough to frighten it. Impossible things do not need collars. Impossible things do not need reward notices. Impossible things do not need legal arguments, hired hunters, or public warnings. Rome builds so many barriers because human beings keep finding gaps. The rain stops. Water runs from roof tiles into a narrow street. Somewhere, a door opens and no one notices. A figure steps out under a borrowed cloak, carrying nothing that would betray him except a heart beating too loudly. The city continues sleeping, trading, praying, and dreaming of itself as eternal. Yet in one small movement through wet stone and grey light, the machine fails for a breath, and sometimes a breath is enough. The silence after the chains is not empty. It is filled with what Rome tried to make ordinary, and what history still struggles to hear. You walk now through ruins where punishment has lost its immediate voice. Yet the stones keep a colder memory. A threshold remains. A drain runs beneath a kitchen floor. A ring is fixed into masonry. A narrow room holds stale air in the imagination, as though someone has only just stepped out. The sun rests softly on broken walls. Grass pushes between paving stones. Lizards move over warm brick. The wind carries dust, wild fennel, and the distant sound of modern footsteps crossing ancient ground. Visitors look at mosaics, courtyards, painted rooms, and famous streets. They admire colour, planning, engineering, elegance, and all of that is real. Yet another Rome waits beneath the admiration, quieter and less comfortable. Archaeological research from Pompeii, Herculaneum, Ostia, and Roman Britain has helped scholars at Cambridge, Stanford, and the University of Reading reconstruct the living spaces of enslaved people through small rooms, work areas, tools, restraints, and household layouts. These findings do not restore every lost voice, but they disturb the polished surface. They show that slavery was not a shadow outside Roman civilization. It was built into its rooms. You notice how little survives of an enslaved person's inner life. The master leaves letters, the jurist leaves opinions, the poet leaves metaphors, the owner leaves a tomb. The enslaved person may leave a scratch on plaster, a tool worn smooth by use, a cooking pot, a footprint in ash, a name carved by someone else, or nothing at all. Silence becomes the archive's most common material. That silence can mislead. It may tempt the comfortable mind to soften the past, to imagine that because voices are missing, suffering was smaller, but absence is not innocence. Absence is often the result of power deciding who gets recorded, who gets quoted, who gets believed, and who becomes merely part of the background. Rome did not only own bodies, it shaped memory. A strange tidbit from excavated households is how easily visitors can miss enslaved spaces even when standing near them. The decorated dining room draws the eye, while the cramped service corridor disappears into usefulness. A storage corner seems unimportant, a back room seems plain. History has a rather sneaky habit of hiding labour behind beauty, then charging admission to admire the beauty. Very tasteful of it, of course. You move through a villa where a wealthy family once reclined among lamps, painted walls, and served dishes. Somewhere nearby, enslaved workers carried water, mixed wine, cleaned waste, prepared food, and listened for orders. The same house held comfort and coercion. The same evening could contain laughter in one room and dread in another. Architecture does not confess this willingly. You must ask it carefully. Scholars continue to debate how best to recover enslaved experience from evidence created mostly by owners. Some argue for reading material remains closely, treating small rooms, wear patterns, restraints, and spatial arrangements as testimony. Others warn that interpretation can become too confident when direct voices are absent. The debate is necessary because the past deserves care, not fantasy. Yet caution should not become silence again. The ruins also raise the question of what Rome wanted hidden. Not hidden because nobody knew slavery existed. Everyone knew. Hidden in a deeper sense, protected from moral disturbance by habit, law, wealth, and language. A punishment could be made public, but the full humanity of the punished was concealed. A collar could announce ownership, while the wearer's grief remained unnamed. A sale could be recorded, while the severed family disappeared. This is why the story still follows you. It is not only about Rome, it is about the human ability to turn injustice into furniture, routine, paperwork, and background noise. It is about how a society can build roads, aqueducts, libraries, temples, and laws while also building fear into the lives of those who keep it running. Civilization does not guarantee mercy. Sometimes it organizes cruelty very well. You stand beside an ancient doorway and imagine the sound of a bolt sliding closed. Not loud, just final. That small sound contains the entire question of escape. The person inside may know the street lies a few steps away. The city may be awake. The road may lead outward. The sea may wait beyond warehouses and gulls. Yet every path has been filled with watchers, punishments, hunger, memories, and names written by others. And still, not all were defeated. Some ran, some negotiated, some endured until manumission, Some loved in secret, some saved coins, some prayed at crossroads, some helped others hide, some became freed people and carved their names into stone with a force that feels almost luminous. Rome's machine was vast, but it never became total. Human beings kept making small rooms inside themselves where Rome could not sit. The unsettling truth is that escape was nearly impossible because the prison was everywhere. It was legal, social, economic, emotional, architectural, and psychological. It lived in chains and in kindness, in roads and in family bonds, in threats and in promises, in punishment and in hope. The fugitive was not only fleeing a master, he was fleeing an entire world that had agreed to call ownership normal. You feel the weight of that agreement as evening settles over the ruins. The stones darken, the tourist voices fade, a bird lands on a broken column, then lifts away again. The ancient city seems peaceful now, but peace can be deceptive when it rests on forgetting. Beneath the calm surface remains the memory of people who cooked, carried, dug, copied, nursed, ground, built, suffered, and sometimes disappeared into roads without monuments. Perhaps the real hidden truth is not a single punishment, or one terrible law, or one road lined with fear. Perhaps it is the realization that Rome made escape difficult by making slavery ordinary. It taught people to see possession where they should have seen a person. It taught households to confuse control with order. It taught law to speak neatly while bodies trembled. The ruins do not answer back. They rarely do. They offer fragments, and the fragments ask you to listen slowly. A collar, a room, a legal phrase, a reward notice, a footprint near a doorway, a name half preserved. Each one is small, yet together they form a dark constellation over the ancient world. You leave the stones without a simple conclusion. The question remains open, as it should. How many tried and vanished? How many stayed because love held them? How many were caught because hunger betrayed them? How many found a road that didn't return them to fear? The empire kept better records of owners than of longing, so longing must be reconstructed from what power failed to erase. And perhaps that is where the silence after the chains becomes most powerful, not in what Rome declared, but in what it could never fully control. The wish to step beyond the threshold, the memory of another name, the quiet refusal to believe that ownership was the natural shape of a human life. Rome tried to make the enslaved body speak obedience, yet somewhere, beneath law, iron, and fear, the older language of freedom remained unfinished. The night becomes gentler now. The road is no longer crowded. The harbour is softened into a dark line beneath the stars. The household lamps burn lower, and the workyard grows still. Even the stones seem to release their heat back into the air, slowly, almost tenderly, as though the earth itself is exhaling what it has held for centuries. You do not need to solve every mystery tonight. Some histories are too wounded for neat endings, and some lives reach us only as fragments carried through ash, law, rumour, and broken walls. Let them remain with dignity. Let the unanswered names rest without being forced into certainty. Let the silence have room around it. The chains are gone from your hands. The road beneath your feet is only imagined now. The fields fade into darkness, and the city becomes a distant pattern of lamps, each one smaller than the last. You breathe in, and the ancient dust settles. You breathe out, and the noise of Rome recedes a little farther. Perhaps, in that fading, there is a softer truth. Empires rise with stone, command, and fear, but memory moves differently. It waits. It returns. It asks quietly to be heard. Tonight, you have listened to the people who stood near the doors, near the mills, near the roads, near the edges of freedom. Their story does not end cleanly. It simply grows quieter. And as your eyes grow heavy, let the ruins dim, let the roads empty, let the sea carry no pursuer, no command, no shouted name, only a dark horizon, a cool wind, and the faintest sense that somewhere beyond the last Roman lamp, a human being is still walking toward morning. End of script. Good night.